Hi everyone, this is Crenshaw with Eden once again, and we have a special one for you today because we are actually here with our very own group of developers and supporters. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hey man, excited to do this. I'm Huck. I've been around this space for quite a while now, specifically with Commune. Um, Met Cool Razor and Baco. I don't know, it's been probably 4 months now or something like that. We've been kind of doing things together and working on stuff. Um, Mainly, I handle infrastructure, but then also I just do a lot of connecting people and finding projects that are cool that I think are worth working on in the Commune ecosystem and also outside of it. So yeah, that's kind of my role here, I guess.
hmm And then
Uh,
Bako.
yeah, I'm Bago. I'm general builder and developer. Worked with Eden. Worked with Commune. Met everybody through Huck. Huck's basically gave us a bunch of free compute. We followed the compute. Now we're here. Saw a lot of value in Commune. Decided to actually invest our resources and time developing on larger scale projects.
hmm
We now work with Eden, building the subnet.
Okay, and Cool Razor.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Cool Razor. I've been working in the technology space for a couple decades now, and my background expertise is in DevOps and infrastructure. So making sure the servers stay alive and happy and working well together. And in the DevOps space, working with developers to get code from laptop or desktop all the way out to production. So I kind of, met Baco, and then down the line met Huck, and we kind of, combined, kind of Voltroned a little bit to become
hmm
a powerhouse, if you will, and are trying to do some great stuff in Commune. Kind of like Huck mentioned, met him about 4 months ago or so, and man, a lot has happened in that time. Very excited to kind of see where things go, and really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been a lot happen in that time, but using that 4 months as a time frame, obviously that's how long the three of you have sort of been acquainted. But we know that you, Huck, for example, have been a part of the commune ecosystem for a significant amount of time at this point, probably upwards of a year. Is that correct?
Uh, is it? It's probably getting on to like a year and a half or so now. I think I met
hmm
I met Fam originally through the BitTensor community actually back in I don't know, November of 2022, I guess.
hmm
So yeah, and we just started working on things very similar to this team. It was kind of just like connected with him, really liked his idea. I kind of already in the back of my mind had some similar thoughts of what I'd like to do with helping developers connect with each other through a GitHub style
hmm
thing. And then Pam was already working on it, so it was just a really good match. So yeah, I've been around for quite a while. And then as things started to kind of diverge into more decentralization on Commune,
hmm
I found this team, and I wouldn't say like Fab and I are working in parallel just on different things. So it's still great. I mean, it's been a ride. Like wow, can't believe it's been so long already. But in some ways, I can't believe it's been such a short amount of time. It feels like I've lived a lifetime in the last year and a half or whatever it's been. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been awesome to see the growth, especially I would say like around at about the year mark, so last November now, like November
hmm
2023, I feel like Commune really just started coming into its own and exploding. There were a lot of people building, and still are a lot of people building on the space, and it took a lot of the weight off of, I think, well, specifically off of Fan. The guy was working like a maniac, and he still is. So
hmm
um, it's been it's been quite a ride. It's been a lot of fun
Oh,
to watch it evolve. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as we said, the sort of time seems to fly by when things have been changing and chopping and whatnot, especially over the recent periods. But Bako Cool Razor, you obviously begun interacting with Huck around 4 months ago, but how long has it been that the two of you have been a part of the ecosystem as a whole?
Ecosystem of a commune. I think it's been what would you say, Baco? Since around December timeframe, we started
For you,
interacting with the.
December. For me, more like
Yeah,
early February, late January.
yeah,
I was reluctant to get into the space. They had to drag me in here, kicking and screaming.
Okay.
and then he kind of sort of saw the light, if you will, and the opportunity. It was kind of funny, but yeah, man. I mean, I was like, I don't want to say flirting with it, but checking it out, seeing what it's all about back in December time frame, and trying to wrap my head around it. I was very confused in the beginning, especially where I was like, it sounds like you're making pie. But and then we got to understand more of the module system and more of an idea of like what the spirit behind Commune is. Decentralized, blockchain, obviously, that allows for validators and miners to perform tasks such that, and more AI focused, right? So that
Okay.
people can use the ecosystem to get things done. So anyway, it was getting used to that and learning more about the nuances of that back in December, and that matured over time.
Okay, and sort of learning those nuances and coming to that realization was what sort of attracted you to start actively contributing to what was being developed?
Yeah, it was kind of what Baco was alluding to from my perspective was there was compute available to us, and Baco and I were doing a lot in the AI space, and compute is king, right? So we saw that
Yeah.
there was compute tied to commune, so it was kind of this symbiotic thing at first, and this is how we goaded Baco into it. He could speak more to that, but it was like, here, you want some compute? All right, but we need to do something for commune with the compute. And it was just kind of a Venn diagram. I was like, well, we do AI things. So let's use the compute to do that and then wrap it in commune. And then little by little, that became more of an emphasis as of late. So that's kind of how that started. Yeah.
Okay, and so how did it sort of go from that idea of let's get in there and let's sort of play around and see what we can do with it to developing where you guys are now with the Eden subnet just recently being launched?
And what do you think, Baco? I think what was the impetus of like that switch?
Sort of one thing led to another. It was like incremental steps. I initially came into the space and I was like, I didn't know anything about Web3. So like I literally didn't even know how to open a wallet. So I was like brand new, and I'm just like, everybody's telling me that this is a scam. Like it's gonna be bad. So like I was like really defensive initially. But then eventually I got to know Huck, and then got to know some people, and then people started showing me the ropes a little bit. And then once I realized that it's all like one big giant nerdy puzzle, I just went ham and dove in, and now I know how the substrate layer works, and how to build pallets and all kinds of other things that I did not know like 2 months ago. So
Okay, that's interesting. And then obviously, Cool Rizzy, you've sort of taken very seriously the core manager community elected role. And how has that
Yes.
been sort of working out in enabling you to get more involved in what's going on within the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I was writing tests for Commune more or less early on because I saw that there was a lot of development happening. But it's one of those things where there's unintended consequences, and I've seen this in my own code. It's like I go to squash one bug, and then I do that, and then lo and behold, it creates a bug in another area of code. And
The
so
proverbial
because
Hydra.
yeah, exactly. Cut off one head and then two more show up. So yeah, same kind of thing. Well, that really goes well into my DevOps background where I can have automated tests. So I started working on writing a bunch of tests in there, and also creating pipelines so that like when somebody wants to commit something to commune, they have to create a pull request, and it kicks off all these tests. So that it reduces the possibility of breaking things, is in the sense that they have to their pull request needs to pass all these tests, which is great because there's a lot of times, like in the Hydra example, there's things you're not testing because it doesn't seem related to what you're working on, and so this just automates that for you. So I did a lot of that. I also facilitated a couple meetings because it seemed like there was a lot of individual groups, and I wanted Commune to be a little bit more transparent and working together. It's kind of like decentralized, yes, but it would be nice if the whole community knew what the whole community was heading towards. So tried to facilitate some of those as well, and that went really well. Very excited to be able to do those and be a part of them.
Okay, just sort of give everybody more of an idea. For those who aren't like active developers, I guess it can be quite hard to get information, or at least information that's at a level that it's possible to understand without all the prior knowledge that developers would require. And so sort of facilitating those meetings was your way to try and give the voice a little bit of a tweak so that people could understand what was being said.
Yeah, and just add some transparency. A lot of times we'll kind of code in a in our dark corner in a cave, and then nobody knows that you're in there working on that. So I've seen that from on both ends, being the guy in the cave, and then also being the consumer, being like, is anyone working on anything? I don't even know. And so I facilitated some meetings where the trick was they were public meetings, but only the developers could speak. And the reason behind that is it wasn't really meant to be something like a public forum per se, but more about like these core devs communicating together in a public way so that people kind of knew what was in process. And if you were really technical, you might get a lot out of it, but it was really about the transparency and bringing the community along on the journey so that nobody got surprised about the questions we were asking. Because a lot of people would have questions and it's like, is that even being thought of at the development level? And this way it would show that it is. And some of them are just really hard problems. And so we'd throw out a bunch of ideas and talk it out. But that way we'd have the speed of just the core devs talking to each other, but we'd also have the transparency where anyone could listen in.
Okay. Okay, I understand that. And so when it comes specifically to the Eden subnet that has just launched, is there sort of a brief rundown that you can give for sort of the kind of contribution that that's going to provide for the community?
Yeah, so the Eden subnet has one main goal, and that is to provide a vector storage. And for people in the AI space, this may be really familiar, but for those of you who may not be familiar with what a vector store is, it allows an AI model to basically, in layman's terms, have memories. So what happens is an AI model has been trained on data. Well, that's great, except an AI model doesn't know your data, right? It doesn't have your bank statements. It doesn't have your own PDFs, your own knowledge. So how do you accomplish that? Well, that's where the vector store comes in. You say, hey, I have this PDF of some piece of information. I'm going to go to a bank statement because that's the easiest thing I can think of.
Okay.
And so what I would do is I would take my bank statement, I'd put it in the vector store, and then the AI model that didn't know anything about my banking would now be able to speak to it. It's now a part of its long-term memory, I guess you could say.
Okay.
There's more technical nuances to it. So that's the problem that the Eden subnet's trying to solve. But the beauty of this is very symbiotic with other potential subnets because Commune is an AI blockchain. So having this now there means that somebody can write more AI tools, and now it has access to being able to do memory storage. This is still in development, and it's still like an ongoing process, but that's the why. We want the AI to be able to do more things, and adding that memory component is what we're doing.
Okay. And then from a developmental standpoint, obviously, we know that you did a lot of the specific development for it, Baco. Sort of what came along during that process? What was some of the major points that came up, positive or negative?
Mostly it was a learning experience for me, just figuring out how the validators work with the subnet, how the RPC palette interacts with the calls that you make to the blockchain and how everything gets recorded, and then figuring out how to build the additional layer on top of it where you can build something like our validators right now are basically validating that the miners are generating embeddings. And so currently they're not generating embeddings that are particularly useful, but this week we're going to be upgrading it and switching it over so that they'll be I figure the good first target is going to be all of the documentation and code of commune itself. And then that way we can have a knowledge store attached to a large language model with RAG as the first thing that Eden will produce in terms of using that. So like learning how to build that layer and have it interop with the blockchain was all just like brand new stuff to me. So, but I really, really like learning. So I basically just dove right in.
Okay. Do you think that was a large portion of your motivation, not only for your project being something like a vector store, but also for a lot of the work you've done on the simplification of other systems and processes? Like you had the simplification of setting up the miner, and some of the other things that you've worked towards, like the endpoints and whatnot, has all been accessibility, simplification improvements, for example. Do you think that a large reason for that was because this was such a huge learning experience for you and you felt so rewarded by that, or?
yes and no. I found it extremely frustrating, honestly.
Okay.
The commune library FAM's coding style is unconventional.
Mm.
And it's unfortunately not super well documented. So he has a really interesting abstraction layer that allows him to perform very complex manipulations of Python modules that are like they're really quite advanced. But
Mhm.
the problem is that it blocks your the logic of the code from connecting one dot to another. So you can't tell where things go. So when I first started learning about it, I couldn't like I literally had no idea how any of it worked, and like going through the code wasn't telling me anything because it just sort of like hit this wall and then it like went somewhere, but I don't know where it went.
Okay.
Um, and then so it took me probably like 2 weeks to figure out exactly how everything worked in the back end of that. And I'm like, nobody else needs to know how, like, nobody else needs to go through this. So like, I just started documenting stuff and like making things easier for people, and getting just making things a little bit more clear in terms of the abstraction, so that you can still do the manipulation and powerful things, but you don't lose the clarity of the code.
Okay, yeah. I mean, a lot of that's already come through, and a lot of those simplifications have come through. So we're excited to see what might be coming in the future. But you said Huck being sort of presumably one of the larger compute providers for Commune, but also having an interest in many other projects. Are there any other that you want to talk about? It's sort of anywhere else that you're
Yeah.
sort of looking into, or any other projects, as you said, normally it's ones that take your fancy or that you feel invested or passionate about.
Yeah, so I'll start with the subnet, and maybe more of a abstract idea of why we bothered making a subnet in the first place. So CoolRazor and Baco have been working on a lot of this stuff already, like CoolRazor alluded to earlier. And the vector store was something that they had already done a lot of work on.
Hmm.
And applying it to a subnet just seemed like a really, I would say it definitely hasn't been a low-hanging fruit because it's been a lot of work. Like Baco would probably slap me for saying that it wasn't that. It was like the easiest road, I guess, that we could take and
Hmm.
add value to the community. But the main intention of, I guess, I'll now like 1,000-foot view Eden, uh, is to help incubate more projects, kind of like I was able to do with compute with Commune, and what Baco and Tim have been able to do in the back end of Commune itself. I wouldn't say we incubated Commune, but it was a good first try at it. From there, we wound up connecting with the guys at previously Omni Labs and now part of the Eden group proper.
Hmm.
And the subnet was really one of the first steps in doing more projects, and not necessarily just inside of the commune space, but everything that we're building, we're doing. You know, I'd say dual purpose, but it's far more than just dual purpose. Like um, for a startup project, for example, to have a vector store and to have somebody available to help them figure out substrate right off the rip instead of trying to fix it later,
Yeah.
or having the exposure of these types of interviews, having access to compute and things like that are I mean, a lot of projects just die because
Hmm.
they don't get those things, and they could be really great projects. They just don't. Advertising is huge.
Hmm.
I think compute, obviously, like Coolrazer was saying, is huge. Having some technical expertise in an area that you might not know is huge.
Yeah.
And so, as far as the Eden subnet itself goes, it's just one piece of a much larger pie, and it's where we're focused right now because it's got to get we got to wrap up a few things and get some front end stuff going for it and all that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the main goal being a sustainable incubator, which comes from we will be donating a portion of our mining profit to uh, a treasury, and not just from commune, but getting into Bitcoin mining on flare gas and mining Tau, mining
Hmm.
Zealous or Nimble or all these other tokens, so that we can turn around and have an incubator that's not just preying on people that are willing to put their money in to use the service, but actually have
Hmm.
a fund there for them to do things. I mean, it's all in the end, of course, it's selfish because we'd wind up making money on founders tokens and things like that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really great thing in space. So 1,000-foot view of what we're doing, but that's really it. Individual projects I probably won't speak to too much because a lot of them are really new and I don't want to overpromise or anything. But yeah,
Hmm.
we're doing a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, yeah, it's just evolving over time as we go. But that's kind of the goal is to turn into more of an incubator than anything.
Okay, it seems like a lot of focus on sort of like laying proper foundations so that you give the accessibility to other people to do what they do best or to be able to provide or build exactly what their visions are for things.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even some of the other subnet developers could you could see they could use some help in a couple of things. Like our subnet, not to pump our tires, but it's definitely the easiest one to mine.
Mm,
Um, and so, in that sense, we offer help to people. You get into this dangerous space where it's like, I don't want to use the word. If somebody found out we were working with another subnet, it'd be like, oh, it's a cabal. But it's not. We're genuinely just trying to help people get things working properly. And like Cool Razor said earlier, and maybe we'll get into this more again, just doing like a public, not a forum per se, but just public meetings between the teams or making
hmm.
things as transparent as we can so that that's not a concern that people have or need to have.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
because in this space, that does tend to be a major problem. Like you go ask
Hmm.
anybody that's been mining BitTensor for the last 2 years, and you're going to hear all the same stories that you've heard on this side too. Like it's been a things can be exploited, people try to exploit it. So I understand the
Mm,
hesitation of being like, oh, we don't want like 3 or 4 subnets all working together. Because yeah, that could turn into a bad thing, but that's absolutely not the intention. So as much as we can make that public knowledge of what we're doing, as far as it matters to people, anyways. I mean, there's things you just don't care about, like how do you? I don't know. I can't think of I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it's if we
yeah,
change
not
the way that the
everybody.
command looks, for example, right? Like if we change it so that it's
Mhm,
not, for example, module, like the module key, like your main key, and then you've got a module, and then you've got modules in Python that aren't
mhm.
really the same. It gets really confusing. So changing some like vernacular and things like that. I mean, I don't think people really care too much to have an
No,
hour long
Hans
conversation
has
about
already
that. But
suggested it. I think it's a great idea because, like, yeah, what are you talking about? Makes it very
yeah. So, anyways, I'm rambling, but hopefully you see what I'm saying. There's just the things that are big. For example, like proposals and stuff like that. The major
Mhm.
proposals. I really believe those need to be hashed out before they get put to a vote.
Yeah.
With the community. And even if you don't get any engagement or at least at least you can look back and say, "Hey, we gave you like 2 weeks to talk about this." So,
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I
anyways.
mean, it's one of the core tenets of commune was community, right? And
Mhm,
so anything
absolutely.
that can push towards us setting ourselves apart from other protocols or other projects by engaging with the community in a much larger way, I guess is just in keeping with the spirit of the protocol itself.
Yeah, I would say was and is very important to commune, if not the most important thing, um,
Mhm.
as far as the social aspect goes. And,
Uh,
yeah, anyways, I'll leave it
mm.
there.
User.
And so, in terms of your overall goals within the ecosystem, do you feel like you've reached it as of right now, or do you feel like there's more that you would like to accomplish?
Oh, I think it's like if you own a boat, there's always something else to do. I
Mm,
don't think it's a piece of work that will be finished.
My grandpa worked on his
Again, I
boat till the day he died.
yeah, there you go, man.
mhm,
It's like, do I feel like I accomplished everything I wanted? Uh, Not yet. No, I think I'm very happy with the progress that's been made in the last
mhm,
year and a half. It's amazing to look back over it. I think a lot of people like you could write a book and people will never get to see that whole picture. But
mhm.
it's been yeah. I mean, yeah, we're on track to do everything that I was hoping that it would do, and I think that's really cool to see come into real life. But will it ever be over? I don't think there's ever going to be a day where I'm like, and we're done. I'm done here. See you later. My work's complete.
Yeah,
But
nothing's ever done. It's just when you decide to stop working on it, that's when
yeah,
that's just the same
yeah,
with art,
exactly.
same with music, same with everything.
Mm. I
The
mean, I guess
introduction
it's
of the DAO and that kind of stuff was huge in my opinion, just because it really like in technically we're more decentralized than BitTensor. Not knocking them at all. I think it's a great project, but when that happened, I was like, man, that was a big that was a big finish line to cross, if there are finish lines. And so in that aspect, yeah, I think that's great. Like Hansa's team, the commune-ai guys have been fantastic. And I think that was a big one for me. The DAO was huge because that was always the goal. And even FAM would say that. Like FAM voted for that.
Hmm.
It's always been the goal to decentralize it and give it back to the community.
Yep.
I think maybe there's still some growth to do inside of how strong the community is as far as understanding and voting for different proposals.
Hmm.
Um, but that's kind of incumbent on like lead developers or core developers of different subnets to communicate that stuff to people in a kind of digestible way. And that'll come
Yeah,
with
keeping
time.
them invested and interested and making sure that they're excited to follow along. Because if they only get updates sort of once a month or so, then it's very hard for them to keep interested. It would just be a case of, oh yeah, I'll go away and I'll come back in a few months again. Whereas if you can keep this constant, steady stream of information, obviously as we're trying to make sure that is provided to the community, it allows people to sort of know, oh, let me regularly check in, as opposed to let me forget about it for a few months and then come back and maybe something's changed. I think that constant engagement goes a very, very long way in like having people actively be involved in changes that happen step by step, as opposed to just floor by floor, as an example.
Yeah, and I think that's really not to be the only person talking here, but I think that's a big part of the reason why we engaged Omni Labs in the first place. And Bowser and you and Corny have been great about providing that information, and it's really
Mhm,
a big piece of what Eden is trying to do. And so,
mhm.
put our money where our mouth is. Here we are doing exactly what we're talking about, and that's cool to see. Like a lot of things are coming together. It's yeah.
And so there was reference to obviously incubation being in the future, obviously for the collective. Is there anything else potentially that you guys would like to talk about what might be coming in the future, or what people might want to keep their eyes open for, or even just whether or not there's sort of open space for people to suggest what they would like to see from you?
I know that we do want to open up a subnet as well for Agent Artificial, which is like it was originally Cool Razor and I's project in the Web 2 space for artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
Huck's joined us as a partner, so we're working on that. But that's like kind of outside of the scope of commune stuff. But we do want to offer our inference services for basically every kind of inference. So like art, like text, audio, speech,
Mm.
music, anything you want. That's going to take a little bit more work, but we do want to deploy that at some point or another in the future as well.
Yeah, I
I mean,
definitely see a lot of synergy there. And not to use an overused corporate term, but the reality is, like, I think the work that we're doing for like AI generation, right, is really useful, and I'm really excited to see us do that. And I know that there's other subnets doing similar things, but I
mm,
think there's a lot where we can work together. And then because basically we're doing the building blocks that can then later be strung together to do something really big. For instance, what Baco and I, we have a really big heart for agents, and so agents need a bunch of things. They need the memories, right?
mhm,
They need the inference, which is the generation, and then they need different types of inference, and then they need the access to go do things. And then
mhm,
Cynthia subnet is synthetic data, so that helps you get even better models because you need the models. So by connecting all these together, there's a lot that can happen. So I'm excited to see that happen, but that's going to be as the subnets individually mature and as commune itself matures, that will open that door that then theoretically we can write an agent that's using a model that was based on synthetic data from
mm,
Cynthia to then
mhm,
do generation. I think it's Mosaic is doing generations, right, of image.
mhm,
And then we go from that, and then we use memories from the Eden subnet, and it's like one agent that's using or being a consumer of these subnets. That's something that I'm passionate about and looking forward to seeing in the
mhm,
future. But there's a lot of groundwork that needs to happen to get there. So I'm not, going to promise that that's an overnight thing by any means. But
mhm,
I do see that being really powerful later. And so that's what I hope to see, is that the subnets aren't just like individual microcosms that exist in themselves by themselves, but they're
mhm,
adding to the tool set of commune itself. And I know that's definitely in the spirit of how commune started, that you can just over Python RPC hit these different miners and consume the task or tooling that they're providing. And the validators are just making sure that they're doing their job. And then the point is that we as a community can use those tools. And I see that being very powerful and very cool. And then to Baco's point, yeah, we also want to, not just stay in commune. We want to bridge into other industries and other ecosystems as well. And I just see a lot of potential there, but we gotta, I overuse this term, but we gotta like crawl before we walk, before we run. And it's very true. But you know what? Every month we're going a little bit faster. We're doing a little bit more. So I'm very excited. But I know that's a little generalized, but it's very real. Like I want to write agents, and we've written some agents, but being able to use the tooling on the blockchain, I think would be very, very powerful. And it's also just frankly cost beneficial or cost conscious, because a lot of these tools that are on the blockchain, if you don't use it on commune, you're going to have to go pay for it at OpenAI or et cetera, et cetera. So I do think there's a real value that we're providing the world outside of commune by running things on commune. So it's really interesting. So I'm excited to see that happen. Anyway, it was a little long-winded, but I hope that was helpful.
No, that's okay. Just to clarify as well, by agent you mean an artificial intelligence that's able to take actions based on parameters provided to it.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny term. So an agent has several components, right? It has an AI model, so that's the brain. And then I want it to do a thing. Well, in order to do a thing, you need a couple of things. And so, yeah, it's kind of just a generic term for that. But like, for instance, if I wanted an AI agent to listen to my email, every time an email comes in, it would read it and then do basic certain actions based on that. Like it says, oh, this is a junk email. I want you to flag it as spam. Or no, this is my mom asking about something, and then I say yes every time, and we put it on the calendar. And the agent would do that, right? So it's very generalized, but that is the idea, that we would then hook it into all these different things.
Okay, I mean, that's incredible. If there's nothing else that you guys want to talk about, we'll sort of leave it here so we can keep all the important information condensed. But it seems like a lot of big picture, this is sort of our first step, as it were, into the wider world where we want to, as you said, build these bridges to the other communities within commune-ai and other communities within sort of the Web3 space in and of itself. So it's very exciting trying to, or seeing that there's a group that's trying to big picture connect everything possible, have all these nodes linked to one another. So that's very, very exciting. So thank you all for your time. And again, if you have any afterwards, then feel free. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Crenshaw. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.